Good morning, Market Chameleons, and everyone joining us for the first time. Thanks for coming by and checking out the Market Chameleon pre-market webinar. Before we get started, let's take a look at the shared disclaimer. Be aware that neither Dimitri, myself, or Market Chameleon are registered investment advisors or a broker-dealer. If you're searching for investment advice, please reach out to a licensed professional. This show, as all our shows, is for informational purposes only concerning Market Chameleon tools and products. With that, one last look at the disclaimer. And let's bring on Dimitri Pargamonic to the stage. How you doing, Dima?
Good morning, Will. How are you?
Good to see you, buddy.
Good morning, everyone. Let me share my screen here.
And this morning we're talking about tracking intraday stock returns, right? By the hour.
Yep. So we're going to take a look at a tool that tracks the performance of a stock intraday, and it's going to be a table. So the table allows us to quickly analyze and visualize how a particular stock performed based on the time of day. And I'll show an example. We'll look at it, see what type of insights we could get. And let me default to first SPY. So when you type in SPY up here in the search, you'll come to this SPY page, the main page. On the left-hand side, you have a menu. Click on price action. And then you have this other menu to the right under trading hours. You have all these selections. We're going to look at it's called best hour, worst hour, kind of, but you'll see what I mean here. Let me close this menu to the left. So once you click on that, best hour, worst hour, you come to this table. And in this table for SPY, we have some summary statistics up top. Then you have the data here below showing you the performance based on the date. So up top here, you could see today's performance. So this is going to be as of Friday's close. We're not open today yet. This is still pre-market. So right now it's shown as of Friday's close. Once we open up today, more data comes in, this will update. And what it does is breaks down the volume. So here it does start out with the performance from 9:30 to 10, and then from 10 to 11, from 11 to 12, 12 to 1, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, and 3 to 4. And you could see here a couple stats. First, it shows us what did the stock do in from the beginning to the end of that time period. So it opens up from 9:30 to 10. You can see SPY is up 0.08% with a volume of 5.7 million. From 10 to 11, SPY is up 0.31% with a volume of 5.078. And so on. So here, up top, and as the day goes on, these will update. And we could also compare that performance and the volume relative to how it usually does. So right below, we have the relative volume. And this allows us to see for that time period, let's say from 9:30 to 10, what was the relative volume if we took the average historical volume for that time period. Let's say go back the last 20 days or 30 days. I think this is based on 30 days. And this allows us to see if any particular time period, let's say from 12 to 1, we see that the volume itself was 1.3 times the average volume. So that lets us know something around that between 12 and 1. We've seen a volume surge relative to the average. May warrant some attention. Maybe something happened during that hour. Maybe there's some news that came out maybe a program trade kicked in, but there was some burst in volume, during that time period. And we also see that during that time period, the stock was up 0.74%. So that volume burst correlated with a positive price performance. Okay. In addition to that, we have this return based on the standard deviation of returns. So this gives us another relative movement. Okay. So is this 0.08%, for example? We see it's positive in between 9:30 and 10. So the first half hour, there's a positive return. But is this return, within typical range? Is it outside the typical range? Like, was it a strong return? Was it, within the expected, up or down move? And that we could convert to a standard deviation move. So you could see here that a 0.08% move for that time period is only 0.2 of a standard deviation. So that would be within your typical expected range, because stocks, they're going to move around in some range typically. So that was within its expected range. The one move that maybe stands out here is this one between 12 and 1, because we had a higher volume than we see on average, with a move of 2.5 standard deviations for that time period. All right, so the 0.75%, that's a big outsized move relative to what we see on average. Okay, so that stands out from all the hours on Friday. Maybe something happened, something kicked in, but certainly more volume and a stronger move. Okay, we see from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, it sold off a little bit, but didn't give back this, and on lower volume than we see typically. So it was able to hang on to most of those gains. And the last hour, again, rallied for a little bit for volume that's 1.2 times its average, and it made a up move with a 1 standard deviation move. So it finished off pretty strong on Friday, the market, or if we use SPY as the benchmark. In addition to that, over here we have a couple more stats measuring the returns or the movements, referencing different starting and ending points. One is the opening gap. So we see that it opened down almost 0.75% in the morning, 0.77%. That measures the previous day's close to the opening, which would have been down 1.4 standard deviations. Okay. The move from the open to the high of the day was 0.98%. The move from the open to the low was 0.25%. So we could see that the move to the upside was much greater than the move to the downside on the day. If we use the opening price as our initial starting point, so much stronger to the upside, much more volatile to the upside than we typically see, up 1.9%. And from the open to the close, we finished up 0.8%. Okay. So that gives us a view of what happened on a day and we break it down into small, smaller time segments to give a little bit more insights, what happened, and when. Now below, we could also do another relative comparison and see like what typically happens in that hour. So here we could see that from 9:30 to 10, if we took the average of the last 30 days, the average return was negative 0.6, meaning that the first half hour on average was weaker. Okay, so if we took the average of each of those returns, it was negative. Average volume was 4.7 million, and 45% of the days in the last 30 days were up moves, 55 down moves. So close to even there, a little bit slightly more to the negative side. So that's why we could compare this, where you had 5.7 million shares traded 9:30 to 10 versus 4.7 typically. Okay, that's why you got this 1.2, the relative volume 1.2. We could do that for every hour. Could do that for every hour, and here it just highlights, the hours. If you could see here that the most negative down moves were between 11 and 12. For that hour seemed to be weaker in general in the last 30 days for whatever reason, but that's what shows up, that those typically seem to be weaker. 65% of those were down moves. So if we looked at the beginning, starting at 11 o'clock, ending at 12 o'clock, after that first hour, the stock tended to be lower 65% of the time with an average loss of 0.4%. The hour that stuck out to be the best in the last 30 days was 2 to 3. So for whatever reason, between 2 and 3 o'clock, 61% of those days tended to be up versus 39% lower for an average gain of 0.11%. So that one had the biggest, best average return for the hour. You can see 0.11%, and with the most frequent up moves. If we wanted to compare the other moves from opening gap, open to the high, open to the low, open to the close. Here we see the opening gap, up or down, almost 50-50, 45% up, 55% lower, average loss of 0.9%. The average move from the open to the high was 0.61%. So once we opened, the average move to the high was 0.61% versus, you can see Fridays exceeded that. The average move to the downside was 0.83% from the open to the low. So you could see that at least in the last 30 days, the skew was more liquid to the downside on average. And from the open to the close, we see a slightly negative move, but half the time was up, half the time was lower. So we're getting a quick visual of the range and distribution of returns and movements and volatility intraday, especially anyone with intraday strategies, intraday like zero-DTE options or intraday strategies, because you're using an option that will expire the same day. So it's a very short-term instrument, zero-DTE options. If you're looking at pair strategies or a short-term holding period in a security, this becomes an important evaluation to understand the potential risks and returns in this instrument. Okay, let's now move on to the absolute average. So the absolute averages, those are looking at returns in absolute terms. It doesn't matter if it's negative or positive. That's why you have a plus or minus. It's looking at the movement, right? The volatility, up or down. And that is important in terms of, options trading, because option instruments are instruments that are based on volatility. So here we could see from 9:30 to 10, the first half hour, we get about an average move of 0.29%. Okay. With the max move of 0.72% and min move of 0.1%. So we get to see the high and low range of the potential movement in either direction and the average. So we could compare that for each hour. So if you have a strategy you're looking at that may be a 1 hour hold, 2 hour hold, you could quickly get to see the historical range of movements around those hours. So we could see here that maybe from 11 to 12 to 1, it didn't move as much as the hour. The other hours are all pretty close, around 0.3%. If we just looked at the low and high range, you can see a lot of them are unchanged. So that's not, something that's unusual. Got a high move here of 1.25% in 1 hour from 2 to 3. Okay. And on the opening gap, again, these are all based on absolute biggest moves. So we see on average 0.42%, the max move 1.45%, the max move to the open to the highs 1.56, the max move to the lows 2.72 from the open to the high. So this gives us, if we measure it from the opening, okay, from the opening to, well, this one's from the close to the opening. This one's from the opening to the high, the opening to the low, opening to the close. We get a sense of how much potential movement there is. We get a max and min, right? The range from 0 to 1.45, from essentially 0 to 1.56%, 0 to 0.72. That's based on the last 30 trading days. Down here, we also have the median, max, and min returns in simple terms. So these aren't absolute terms. So here we could see the range of negative and positive. So from 9:30 to 10, the best move was up 0.65%, worst move down 0.72%. The median move was negative 0.5%, meaning half the moves were below that, half were above. So the median moves, some positive ones were between 10 and 11, 11 to 12, 2 to 3. The range seems between 2 to 3 was the widest, 0.125%, negative 0.7, and 3 to 4 actually, up 1% versus negative 1.10%. So that gives us a good visual of the max min ranges, the average moves, the skews up or down, and the frequency of up and down moves. So now we have a good visual. We could compare it to today's moves if things are unusual or moving differently or as expected, and allows us to kind of focus in on that. Now we could also use this SPY to compare it to, if we wanted to look at another stock, let's say Meta or Google, and then we could compare if Google or Meta, whatever stock, outperformed or underperformed the benchmark index, let's say SPY, for each of those sessions, each of those hours, any particular hour, if something stands out, because, if we saw, for example, that between 12 and 1, that the market that hour made an outsize move on larger than usual volume, we could compare that. Well, what did Meta or Google or whatever you're tracking, follow the market in that situation? Did it lag the market? Did it overperform? Did it underperform? So those are a continuation of relative value comparisons. Okay. If we wanted to go and look at those 30 days by day, these are the days, these are the hourly or, period performance for those days. So you can see here March 21st from 9:30 to 10, 10 to 11, and so forth. So this is the data by day that makes up these stats on top. So I think, Will, I'm going to stop here because I covered this table for today. So let's just stop here at this point.
Well, that was a great webinar as always, Dee. Thanks for joining. We had someone from LinkedIn popped in today, which was cool to see. Thanks everyone for joining. Thanks for coming to our pre-market webinar series. Great job as always, Dee. Thanks so much.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Stay safe out there. Have a great trading day, and we hope to see you tomorrow.
Trade in peace, chameleons. Everyone have a great day. Thank you.